Welcome back to Long Delays Hobbies. I've managed to get my hands on the new Middle-earth Hill Tribesmen Commander set, so I thought I'd do a quick unboxing and build for you guys. So, as we can see, the box contains 3 miniatures. It's got a banner, a hornblower, and a chieftain. The chieftain can be built as the Wildman Oathmaker. So one sprue, as expected. The recent commanders and smaller sets that have been released by Games Workshop for the Lord of the Rings have been just like a single sprue, like the Shelob Gollum set that was released earlier this year was a single sprue. One thing that I've just noticed, it's kind of interesting, is that the banner doesn't have any sculpting on it. Could be positive or negative depending on your output. At least recently, banners that they release usually have some kind of sculpting on them. Not really a big deal for me. I don't really mind too much freehanding the simple patterns. Different bodies here. I'd like to see what pieces are left over from the Wild Man. I'm going to build the commander as an Oathmaker rather than a chieftain because I just like the Oathmaker a little bit better. If someone wants to be a stickler about it, it's easier to use the Oathmaker miniature. He has slightly better rules than the chieftain, I think. And in most cases, if I want to run him as a chieftain, it's not really going to be that big of a deal. So it looks like if you build the Oathmaker, you're going to have all these bits left over, which is kind of cool. You're going to have the shield. Looks like this torso is actually going to be left over too. So I'm going to go ahead and build these now, and then I'll let you know how it goes. We finished building up that Wildman Oathmaker. A few little things to note. There are quite a few mold lines, a few more than I was comfortable with, a few more than are on the Hill Tribesmen regular guys. So there were some on his legs. I tried to scrape some of them off. You could probably still see some on the little leather straps there. I thought there were some gaps as well here. You could probably still make them out. The trickiest part for me was gluing the top to the bottom because your instinct is to line up his tabard or whatever this little front cloth is to the sides. But as you can see here, there is a gap. So if you try to fill that gap by making these pieces flush, then what happens is his waist will come up, and there really isn't any way I could find to make both the waist flush as well as line up this gap here. There's going to be a gap either in the waist or here between the tabard and his legs. I figured it was more natural to have a gap here. Maybe he's moving a little bit, so I kind of left this gap in place. I think this gap is intentional. Anyway, it's a little bit off-putting to have this little gap here. But as I said, when I try to correct it, his waist comes up here. Then that definitely looks off. I'm gonna go ahead and build the banner bearer next. And here's our Hill Tribesmen banner bearer, all finished. There's quite a lot of detail in this miniature. So one thing I liked is the little Crebain that's sitting on the top of his banner. He's also pulling out a sword. So a couple little things to note. There's quite a few little gaps and join lines, I guess because they had to fit all 3 of these miniatures onto one sprue and have options for a 4th miniature. They didn't really have time to ensure that there's no gaps whenever you build these. So just keep in mind, if you are a stickler about gaps, you'll need to fill that, as well as the gaps I talked about earlier in the Oathmaker / Chieftain. So another thing is that they did this thing where the sword that he's pulling that's sheathed is one piece with his hand. So I'm not going to really pull it off here, but kind of slots in here on the back of his waist, and also has a join point here on the end of his hand. You really have to kind of finagle it to ensure that it joins properly both to his arm as well as to his back. If it's not glued in properly, obviously it doesn't look right. It's kind of awkward to put that in properly. So one more thing to note is this little skull that I've glued to the top of his head. It's an optional piece. If you want them to look more like Lord of the Rings era versus War of the Rohirrim era, you could just leave this bit off. Or if you just don't want to paint it, you just want to have one less bit to paint, you can just leave that off. It looks totally fine. He's all done. The Crebain, you do have to glue on because the feet are attached to this banner pole. The top of the bird is a separate bit, so you have to glue them on. So unfortunately, that's not optional if you don't want to paint that. All right, and that's it. We'll go ahead and paint up the hornblower now. And here's our Hill Tribesmen war horn. Thought of the three that this one was probably the easiest to assemble. Still have a few gaps on the side where the face meets the back of the head, but overall this one wasn't too bad to put together. Of course, this one's probably the one you're going to see the least because you don't really need a war horn in Hill Tribesmen or in Isengard, but nevertheless, it's still a really cool model, and it's good to have the option just in case you want to bring a war horn. And it looks like a fun model to paint up. And before I close out the video, I did want to just point out what's left on this sprue. We have the Hill Tribes Chieftain leftover bits, which I think is really cool because you have two different weapon options. You also have the shield, but I think you can just take this guy and attach him using a spare set of legs from the Hill Tribesman box. And there you go, you got an extra Hill Tribes Chieftain. That way you've used all the bits or most of the bits from this sprue, and you've got an extra Hill Tribes Chieftain. And the other thing I did notice while I was just having a casual look at the sprue is that, I don't know how well it turns out, but it is actually dated S25. That means that this was intended to be released in 2025, which I thought was interesting. I'm not sure why it was delayed. Of course, we'll never know that, but I'm guessing that this was actually intended to be released when all of the other War of the Rohirrim stuff came out in, I think, last September. You know, we got like the journal that came out last year, a few other little bits and bobs from War of the Rohirrim. I think the Hera model came out last September. This was almost certainly meant to come out with that. Either there was like maybe a shipping delay, or maybe after the sprue was created, then maybe they just changed their mind. Who knows? Maybe there was some sort of scheduling delay. But the intent when this mold was made was for this to be released in 2025. So that's just something very interesting to keep in mind. So I didn't pick up the Rohan Commanders or the Rohan Riders, but I wouldn't be surprised if those are also dated 2025, and those were also meant to have been released in 2025 as well. I'm probably going to look around at some other channels and see if I can pick up the dates on those sprues as well. And thank you very much for watching this video on unboxing the new Hill Tribesmen command set. I hope you enjoyed watching it, and let me know down in the comment section what you thought of this new set and what you picked up. Did you pick up any of the Rohan Commander set? Did you pick up the Riders of Rohan? Thank you very much again for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out, and don't forget to have a great day. Take care.